Hi, everybody. It's Lori and Lawrence and Ronnie and Jimmy's joining me today. And we're doing an unusual hangout on a Wednesday. This will be our first because we stumbled upon some, kind of mind-blowing information, we think, and we wanted to get it out there real fast. Okay, so Lawrence, can you mute your microphone real quick because we're feeding back?
Mute it. Okay.
Oh boy, here we go. It's just going to do that. I hope it's not going to do that all the way through the show, or I'm going to have to put headsets and microphones and the whole thing on. You. It's you. Okay. We're about to get this settled. We have one too many microphones going here.
We've got a 30-second delay on what everybody else is hearing, so we'll be fine. I just muted mine.
Okay. No, this is not going to work. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to let Lawrence get started. He's going to tell you how he stumbled upon this information, and then we're going to, go from there.
Yeah, it was.
Mute me.
It was a couple of days ago now. I mean, the time's just flown since I've seen it, but every single day I go through the Flat Earth videos just to see what new stuff's been released, and at the moment they're sticking loads of garbage on there, like pictures of naked women and stuff like that, just to obfuscate what's there, so you can't actually see any good stuff. But I always pan through every day several times, and even right to the end. There's usually about 7 or 8 pages, and I saw this one which said that there are no forests on the flat Earth, and I saw it a few times, and I kept seeing it, so I thought, I don't know, I'll have a look just to see what it's about. It's probably another crazy, and well, that was it. I turned it on, and it came to a picture, one of these pictures where you have to, depending on how you look at it, you'll see different things, and then I stopped it, and then I thought I'll go back and have a look at it just to see what it's all about. Because the guy sounds a bit crazy saying there's no forest, because I know there's forests, or what I thought were forests, and then that was it. All hell's broke loose, and when I saw it, the thing had got 7 views, and nobody was looking at it, and if nobody picked up on it, it would probably just got lost in obscurity. But it's over 3,000 views now, and I would imagine that is probably going to be this is the best conspiracy video, and it's the truth, I have ever seen. I've actually mailed this to some people, and they haven't even looked at it. I've sent it to people's boxes, and they've not even looked at it. So I'm just going to play the first few minutes of it, just so you can see what the introduction is like. Most people would have turned off because the guy's Russian. I think he's Russian. And it's quite difficult to make out, and most people think, oh, he's a crackpot, and they turn it off. So let me just get the screen share and play a few minutes of it for you, and then I'll take you through my interpretation of what it's all about. So here we go.
There are no forests on Earth. When you read this loud headline, even with exclamation mark on the end, every sensible person will say that I'm out of my mind and will throw at me millions of photos with images of forest. I want you to believe. This is another trick. They made us think that this is forest. Actually, you are looking at the 30 meters bushes. This is total bullshit and nonsense, you will say to me. Of course, we know how forests look like. We all walked and strolled in them. Well, expected reaction. And it's fair. But after listening or reading this chapter, its headline won't seem strange to you, because you will overturn your concept of forest 360 degrees. And now, first things first. We will begin with well-known picture. Children see 9 dolphins on it, but adults see 2 lovers. A huge difference. Do you agree with me? Make yourself find dolphins now, and find out how it's hard. Feminine fruities will flatly refuse to transform into dolphins. It's funny, because children's problem will be exactly the opposite. This is the first fact. The picture is single, but we see it completely differently. What is more, children and adults can't exchange perceptions. Why it is so? It is simple. I see the way that Matrix ordered, but not the way the real world looks like. Our eyes became traitors over time. We were blinded yet in childhood. Outward world is quite different. We see things through prism of habit and experience. And this prism distorts everything very, very hard. At 30 years of life, this prism gets status of mind protector. And at 40 years of your life, you can go crazy without this prism. You think I am exaggerating? Look at this photo. I am claiming that this is matter that was formed from a magmatic melt from the Earth's depths about 200 million years ago. You think I am out of my mind? In my turn, I can blame you in the same thing. You will understand soon. We will come back to this grass plot later.
Okay, so that was the little puzzler at the start of it, and what you see is a freshly chopped down stump of a very small tree, and that was the puzzle, and then all was revealed as you move through the video. So if I said to you that, because this is what the guy said, that tree is from the stupid Zoic area from 500 billion years ago and was created by a lava flow, you would think I was pretty crazy. But as this progresses, you'll see what we mean with it. So let me just start you off with a photograph and see what you make of this. Where's my photographs? Here we go. Take a look at this. So on the left, we've got these hexagonal blocks, which are at the Giant's Causeway in Ireland. It's probably some protected area, and there are huge columns of these hexagonal blocks. And on the right, we've got honeycombs, and they've got exactly the same shape. But if you go to Wiki and ask about Giant's Causeway, this is what they're going to tell you. It says, the Giant's Causeway is an area of about 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, the result of an ancient volcanic eruption. So when you look at volcanic eruptions to see how stuff solidifies, it's a whole different story. So let's take a look at that. Bear with me again. There we go. Lava. Here we go. So I've got some pictures here of cooled lava. I haven't managed to get the full screen. I'll make it a bit bigger. So we've got lava, and this is what solidified lava looks like. It doesn't form into hexagonal blocks. It you know, it's just willy-nilly, squilly. It doesn't form hexagonal blocks. So the video then moves on further, and it starts showing you some things that lead you to conclude that things that we would perceive as a mountain or a giant outcrop is actually a tree stump. So let's make some comparisons here. Let's find one. Here we go. Tree stumps. Okay, let's make that a bit bigger. So you've got these rocky outcrops all over the world, yeah, with no explanation as to how they got there, apart from official science telling you that these things came from volcanoes and things. But they're all completely flat on the top. So, and one of the biggest ones in the world is Table Mountain in South Africa. So I've got that on here somewhere, I think. Oh, I did have. Here we are. There's Table Mountain. Okay, and you got this. This is a huge, you know, totally flat top to it. So obviously, when you look at these things, you say, well, yeah, it's a mountain. It's made of rocks. But when you start looking close at these things, yeah, you get very close. Yeah. These are people climbing up a rock face, and this rock face is made up of all these columns. Yeah, these are actually fibers of enormous trees that at one time grew 50 miles or higher. And you'll say, well, how do you know they're fibers? Well, when you look closely at these fibers, like any cell, they have an outer coating. So every single cell has got an outer coating. So I'll just make that a bit bigger. Yeah, and you can see the arrows where the outer coating of the fibers has started to strip away to the inside of the fighting. They get people climbing up these things. Obviously, you know, it looks like rock, feels like rock, but what we're talking about are trees that were in a silicone age that until recently, or the last few days for me anyway, I didn't know there was a silicone age. This has been well covered up. There's very little on it. When you start looking for information. This is what these trees look like today, the few remains that are there. They're petrified trees. They're like solid rock, and if you do a cross-section of them, well, you couldn't cut through this with a chainsaw, you know, you just break the blade. And there are petrified forests all over the world. There's quite a few in America. And there's even one of these tree stumps, okay, in Anglesey, just where I live, or where I lived until recently. I used to walk down the beach with my dog every day, and I see this big outcrop of rock where loads of birds congregate, and I'm thinking, how the hell did that get there? But it's a tree stump. So let's take a look at some comparisons of trees and tree stumps. If I can just find the picture that I wanted for that one. It's on here somewhere. Here we go. So here we're comparing a tree. There's a carbon-based tree on the left. Let me make it bigger. And a silicon-based tree on the bottom. Now, what you can see, you know, you are told this is a mountain, yeah. But you look at these columns; they go up straight, and then they bend as they go into the ground, just like they look just like a carbon-based tree. And we've got these things all over the world. So one of the most famous ones is this one here. Now I put some captions on this because I've just took it off the Facebook. This is the one that was in Close Encounters, where the guy, I think it was Richard Dreyfuss, he made a model of this in his house. He was going mad, and he, you know, something came into his head, and he started to mould this pile of dirt in his front room. And you've got this thing, and yet, if you look at it now, it's a tree trunk. You can actually zoom in on it. I haven't got that picture right in front of me now, and see that it just looks like a tree trunk, and you've got all these vertical fibres going up and down, and again, it's perfectly flat on the top, probably as a result of some saw or axe that was used in some very ancient time. Broken trees. Yeah. Anyway, there was some cataclysmic event which damaged everything. You know, some kind of explosion nationwide. So what you have on the left, these are, you know, you'd be told these are sort of rock formations, and on the right you've got a tree that's been damaged by being, you know, hit by lightning or something. But you can see the comparisons, all these jagged edges, and then I mean, these trees, they covered the entire Earth, and they were mined. And you've got things like the Grand Canyon. I don't know where I've got that on here. And when you look at the Grand Canyon, you've got this comparatively tiny lake in the bottom of it, and we're told it's caused by water erosion. But take a look at the Grand Canyon. Yeah, you've got all these rocks on each side and this little tiny river, and we were told that this little tiny river eroded all these, you know, all the sides of this gorge out over gazillions of years, but there's no signs of any water erosion. So these things are all over the world, and you've got deserts that are totally stripped of things. What's happened? They've been mined by some race, you know, thousands of years back, whenever it was, and the waste is no longer here. It's been taken somewhere else. I would imagine it's been taken down by tunnels, because there would have been a huge road network, you know, remaining from how they actually managed to transport this stuff. And there's evidence of this mining all over the world. Even in Antarctica and in Greenland. I've got it on here somewhere. Here we are. Here we've got an Antarctic quarry, and you've still got the residue, you know, the marks of the vehicles that were working these rock faces, which were at one point originally trees. And then we've got one in Greenland somewhere, if I can find that one. I did have. There we are, in Greenland. So you can see in Greenland, yeah, all these are you know, trees that we think were mountains that have been excavated. But nobody lives there now, do they? But they were working it at some point, and all this material has been taken away. Now maybe they were mining for specific minerals, and it was all being taken away, but obviously they needed it for something. You know, if they were giants at that time, then maybe they needed it to build their houses somewhere else. So, next bit. So we've got these unusual shapes, these hexagonal shapes. Now, if you go to the Bolivia salt lakes, again, we've got these hexagonal shapes. So this is some kind of life form, you know, from the Silicon Age, and it's still there now. And these things have been there for a very long time, and they always come up. Let's see what else we've got. Let's bring some more pictures up. Silicon v carbon. So we've got some comparisons here. There's a tree trunk, and you've got these huge things with flat tops in Australia, in the deserts in America. They're all over the place. Some of them are quite famous. So when you look at what we've got on Earth at the moment, the only thing that we actually have remotely similar, and these would be tiny twigs in comparison, are the redwoods and the sequoia trees. But the trees of, you know, of this era, prior to this, these trees, you know, have been estimated to have been over 50 meters tall. Sorry, 50 miles tall. And you might wonder why redwood trees actually grow so big. And I looked into it. Well, I haven't got the page here with me now. I've been digging out that much stuff. But redwood trees, their leaves contain some kind of silicon. And silicon, compared to regular trees, it's at least 10 times more efficient, 10 to 15 times more efficient, so they can grow much quicker. What else have we got? Jack and the Beanstalk. Yeah, I looked into Jack and the Beanstalk, where Jack climbs up this beanstalk that grew right up into the sky. Jack and the Beanstalk dates back to 5,000 years ago, and I think it's been known as other names such as the blacksmith and the ogre and names like that. But this is a fairy tale which has obviously got some truth about it. Got the lava cooled, got the security, got the salts, got the plateaus. Then you've got the petrification. We're told that these petrified trees are caused by them being covered by mud and volcanoes and things like that. And then over millions of years, the water and the minerals in the water seeped into the wood and stuff like that and turned it into stone. But if volcanoes, red hot volcanoes, and the lava actually fell onto wood, it just burns it, and wood rots. You know, it doesn't turn to stone. So if you check on any of the official stories on what's caused petrification, it's another one of the lies. You can look at that on Wiki and other places like that. And this is a depiction of what life would have been like in the past, where man would, you know, a normal-sized man walking in this environment, we'd have mushrooms, you know, the size of enormous trees, and the trees themselves would be as big again. Where else have we got on there? Close encounters, giants caused by life in the past, plateaus. There we go, plateaus. Yeah, so plateaus. What a plateau is, for me now, it's the cut surface of a silicon-based tree stump. Just look how flat that plateau is. How could that have occurred naturally? No way. So, you know, this is, you know, we've done this at short notice now. So I've sort of done a basic introduction of you know, the similarities between these huge outcrops of what we call rock and actual trees. The similarities, that it's more than coincidence. There's stuff to it, and if you look all over the world, you're going to find all these huge excavations of things, and a lot of them, like the Grand Canyon, they've been turned into national parks, but they're actually quarries. This stuff's been taken away somewhere, and that's one of the big questions. What happened to all the material that was taken from the Grand Canyon and other places, and even places like in the UK, we've got the Lake District. These places are perceived as beautiful now, because we were looking at them with different eyes. Now when I see a big mountain, you know, I'm seeing trees that used to be trees, and you can look at things like volcanoes. So volcanoes, according to the video, volcanoes are not old trees, they're piles of waste, probably toxic waste, and that's what's actually causing the heat within them to spew out from time to time. So that one there, yeah, it looks quite attractive, doesn't it? I think that one's up in Japan somewhere, Fujiyama, and they do, you know, give off smoke and stuff from time to time. But I would imagine that that's toxic waste within it that you know, that's generating a lot of heat and smoke. So anyway, I'm going to stop from what I'm doing at the moment and go back to Laurie and Event Skeptic and Jim, and you can put your Tom's halfpenny worth in, if you're still there.
Thanks, Lawrence. Oh, we're still here. Nice job breaking it down. For starters, the idea is that we have to, in order to entertain this, we have to look at it as, okay, this is a different theory than what we've been taught our whole lives, that volcanoes are molten magma coming up from the melted core of the earth and spewing out and building up land mass and creating a little mountain, or a big mountain in any case. He also alludes to the fact that not only are these mountains not volcanoes with magma coming up out of them or lava, they're actually nuclear waste dumps with piles of dirt and whatever on top of them to cover them up, which is basically what we do when we make what? Landfills. And so I'm sure that most people who have seen the video that are watching now, you know, have done some of their own speculation, but we fully intend to speculate during this entire show because this is all new information, things we've never thought of quite this way before. And for those who are going to poo-poo the idea that there was a silicon age prior to the carbon age, we're going to, you know, talk about history. We're going to talk about giants. We're going to talk about giant plants. We're going to give you some information that comes directly from the Bible and from Enoch that supports this information. And I'm looking at it purely from the perspective of they've lied about everything else. So why would I think for a second that they wouldn't have lied about A, our history, B, our past, C, the past that came before us, and onward and onward. And so just like with the globe, I mean, this is a flat earth community for the most part that's watching this video. We've often talked about reverse engineered ad hoc theories that they've created over the last 500 years or so to support the globe as a lie. So now we're facing, okay, well, why wouldn't they have done the same thing with regards to the history of our world? So my speculation after watching the video was that I've always believed in giants. I've always believed in the fact that mankind has passed down verbally through oral history prior to written history, stories and myths and legends that tell us where we came from and what the people were like before us and so on. They actually just recently made a movie about that very thing. It's called The Giver. And one person is given the responsibility of maintaining all of the information from the past. The trick with this giver is that he withholds, or has been told by the council, to withhold negative information or information that they don't want us to know about, future generations to know about. And actually, with the movie The Giver, there is a perimeter set up around where they live, and they are not allowed to go out there. They send drones out there and so on, but it's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, where there's a border, a boundary, and you can't go beyond that because things we don't speak of are out there and they will get you. So I believe now, after having looked at this, that we actually live in a pocket of a greater earth, a greater realm, and that this probably was wiped out and destroyed at one point. And prior to this, there was a silicon-based life forms. And anytime you have a slash and burn, when you have a forest fire, it takes a while for it to grow back. And so the places where we live are growing back, and there's parts of the plain that have not reseeded themselves. They have not grown back. They have horrible big areas of desert and salt and so on. And interestingly enough, what are those areas made out of predominantly? Sand, silica. So there's just a few too many tweaks going on here to ignore. So we're going to investigate it, and we're going to use our standard method of question everything, including, is this a psyop? Is this something that was dumped into the flat earth community? Because the original video did have have it in its title. But I was pretty surprised, shocked, and smiling when I got finished with the video. I thought, boy, there's a new twist, isn't it? So, Ronnie, what do you have on this?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
First off, I'd just like to say hi. Thanks for having me again. Nice to see you, Jimmy, a new panel member that's been added. Hopefully you're enjoying the podcast as much as I am. The hangout, we'll call it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you and to see some of the great foundations that Lori must rest upon, because I don't see too many other truthers out here defending her. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
Now, I'd like to give a short demonstration to add upon what Lawrence has brilliantly done and what you have beautifully put. What I'm proposing here is, not only did the video maker in question open my eyes, I believe he has provided irrevocable, any word you can come up with, unrebukable evidence. These machines that we're looking at here on the screen, these cutting tools, in my opinion, are not new. These could be thousands of years old for all we know. Now, some of the interesting things that the video maker was showing was these giant saw-like things, and if anyone's here ever done mining or any type of work, tunnel building, you know that this goes on. So what he was proposing was that the Grand Canyon itself was actually a quarried wasteland, and basically you could just change the title from forest to mountain range. Let me go into those pictures here. So basically, the circular cutout, is this one showing now, or am I still on the other one? Are you seeing a donut? One second. Okay, here. There we go. You can see here what you've clearly looked at our whole lives, everyone watching and listening, and thought, wow, that's just, a beautiful, I guess the water carved this out. How silly we were, because all along, as we've been here fighting over, let's say, boundaries, these people have been raping and pillaging the earth. And the signs are everywhere. The sequoia trees and the silicon-based life did have, I believe, it's 10% more photosynthesis, and is that correct, Lawrence Lurie?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, keep going. You're doing fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood. It's basically like going from solar power to nuclear power. So what I'm going to propose here, in my opinion, volcanoes are actually man-made, basically weather stations where they erupt them every so often so that they can keep these giant ice walls in place, because I think they're holding back these forests. The two most interesting things about the video in question was where did this material go, and who cut it down? Who cut these trees down, and who mined all this rock, and why? So I'd like to pose that question for the panel, and then I'll jump back into something after. So go ahead.
I'm going to let Jimmy answer that. Who cut those trees down and why, Jimmy? What do you think happened with them?
Well, there's two basic theories that I have now, just after listening to that just entered my mind. One reference is from the book of Enoch, the 7th chapter. It talks about the giants. This is referred to over and over again. It talks about their height being 3,000 ells. So before we translate that into feet, let me just go on a little bit further. It said they consumed all the acquisitions of men. So originally when I saw that for the first time, I thought that just meant food, because something that's large needs more fuel to keep going. So approximately 2,000 years was the period of time between when these giants were here and then their fall or their demise. And it says in the 4th verse, when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And then it goes on of all the things they did. Now, the book of Giants, which is basically a partial scroll that they found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, they call it the book of Giants, but there's some interesting clues in the text. Let me just find them quickly. Okay, in what's called the 3rd fragment, it talks about the fruitfulness of the original earth. And it says that the earth produced great fish, fruits of all kinds, grains, and all trees. But it says that the angels exploited these things. And then in the next part, it talks about where they mixed their seed with other types of creatures and produced what we call monsters. It says literally in the fragments, it says they defiled, and then it's broken off, and then it comes back and it says they begot, giants and monsters. And then there's a few other fragments which basically go back into mighty giants and these monsters. So when I was just looking at that, I thought it's possible maybe that they created these trees originally, that was one of the things that they were doing in their experiments, because they experimented, it says, with everything: plants, mammals, fish. So, just hearing you put it like that for the first time and looking at these references from the Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch, it could be that there was an entire forest of these things that was destroyed in an accident, or it could be they were experimenting and they never got very far in their experiment because of a catastrophic event. So I guess both roads lead to the same conclusion, but that's what I have about that.
Okay. So, over the years, I have followed Joseph Campbell, different mythologies, different legends, done comparisons of things like stories of giants and fairies and elves and so on from different parts of the world. Every different part of the world has these stories. And most all of the stories are inclusive that these creatures lived in these old forests. So
3,000 elves, 2 miles.
3,000 L is 2 miles.
A little over 2 miles. That would be the size.
So that's the size of the giants?
That would be the size of the original giants.
The original giants.
According to the Book of Enoch.
Okay. So that's comparable to our miles today.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think about all of the mythology and the legends and so on, then you have to add up that, okay, why would these legends be in North America, South America, Ireland, Asian areas? I mean, these same stories are everywhere. And so, who cut down these giant trees? Well, if they had machines, my mind is spinning. I almost can't concentrate. There's so many things that I can relate with this, like the story, the movies they're always using the Hollywood movies to give us little snippets of what was real, and they, give it to us in fiction. So let's think about the Transformers movies. Okay, there's these giant machines, silicon-based, perhaps. Why would it be hard for them to make a machine large enough to cut a tree down that big? If they're that big, they're playing with Tinker Toys, Lincoln Logs with these giant stones, the megalithic stones that they built pyramids and other structures with, compared to something that big. That's just like stacking up little Legos. Okay, so the mind boggles when you start to cross compare other things that you've learned and heard about over your life. So
who knows what could have been built with a structure that big.
Well, look at these big stones that they made these pyramids and other megalithic structures. The sizes and the shapes of the stones that they used to make the pyramids with look a whole lot like chunks of those basalt trees, from the what's that called? The Cove of the Strait of the Giants or something? Strait of Trees? What was that, Lawrence?
What was what? Sorry, Laurie.
The stones that all had the honeycomb shape.
That was at Giant's Causeway.
Giant's Causeway. They look to be about the same kind of stone as the stones that are used to build the pyramids. So perhaps what we think of as rocks were parts of trees, and they actually lived that way. So, I'm not going to rule out anything anymore. And there are too many references to giants, giant creatures, giant plants, and so on, both in scripture and the apocryphal books.
And even scientific people today are saying that there was a prehistoric or giant age,
Right.
Pre-our history. So.
Right, where those dinosaurs were. Okay, so Ronnie, carry on. What else do you have along the machine? You got something else along the machinery or the mining part?
Well, yeah. Well, I could talk about. Let me just screen share here. The hexagon shape that we see in nature, and scientists will have us believe that these crystalline or these hexagonal, I can't even say the word, that these shapes just
Octagonal.
yeah, that's it. They just grow naturally, and the funny thing is, if you can see this this flow of the magma, you know, I don't know how any rational person could look at this picture and assume that
that came from a volcano. Correct. Yeah, right.
yeah, it's just ridiculous. And the other interesting parallels I have are capillaries in celery and in our own very own bodies are also grouped in this same manner. You know, for me to see a picture like this, I could never imagine that this dripped from lava and compressed to create what I see here. They look like veins or even the rings in a tree. You know, they're just undeniable, these pictures. I'm going to just pull up another. I'll keep going with what Lawrence was showing with the quarries. This is just unbelievable, in my opinion, because, you know, I've been looking at these my whole life, and can you see the picture here?
Sure.
Like, when you look at this, it's clear you can see the slag or the byproduct where the roots would be going into the ground. First, they felled the large 60-mile tree, and then after it obviously vitrified, they began to scrape it out. And I don't think this happens naturally. And, you know, if you start looking at more pictures from this, I believe is from the Antarctic, you can see the actual diameter of the circular machines as they moved, let's say, the tower crane in the center, which held the spinning tool. You can see, like, it just, you can see that these mountains aren't naturally, well, sorry, we're speculating. But when I show you this cutting tool, in this picture, and these are all over the world, mind you, a Tempe Topa is another one. You can see these clearly look like the tree root structures. The Grand Canyon, you know, like, I don't know how I ever thought this was natural. You know, these are machined edges with cut marks. You can see this is a modern day how they would quarry it, and we're to believe that what the rain falls, and you know, where's the cutting tool? Yeah, here's a modern day of how they excavate marble with, you know, it's identical to what we're looking at. Where's this picture? That, I believe this is Peru, Machu Picchu.
Uh-huh.
Right, and the video maker proposed that these cutouts are great to farm on top of. You just throw a little bit of soil on top, and you got, you know, different levels to. And you can see here in this image, the byproduct of the mining would be these silty, slaggy red areas, and you can see the diameter of the blades. You know, if people think I'm crazy for proposing this, I'd like for someone else to come up with an example. You know.
No, I hear you on that. I mean, it's another thing. Okay, so biblically, and here's another answer for it. And who cut the trees? Or according to David that made the video, who cutted them? Which I thought was really cool. Interesting, different translating languages, but anyway, thanks. So anyway, where did the giants go? What happened to them? You know, if they were here and they were doing this mining, and let's say there was an epic apocryphal event, that Armageddon type event that, you know, wiped out a big portion of what we know as the Earth. what happened to them? Because there have been giants on the earth, according to the Bible, after the flood. So when did this event happen, and where did they go? So one of the thoughts I'd had is, okay, the ice that is at the boundary of our what we call north and south, we can't go there. I mean, we can only go so far there because it's too cold. I mean, it's just cold for humans. But for giants, they could just like step over 300-400 miles of cold and just go the water off duck's back and go on to some other part of the realm. So explain from a scriptural standpoint what happened to the giants in the Bible.
Well, I mean, you talking to me?
Either one of you, you or Ronnie, but go ahead. You got it right here. Ronnie can follow up right after you.
Well, I mean, if you're just going to use the Bible alone, then you'd have to place the giants before the flood, and then again after the flood. The giants after the flood, like the giants that were present in the land of Canaan, they are obviously smaller than the giants that were mentioned in the book of Enoch. But you've got those two time periods, before and after the flood. And then, depending on who you talk to, some people say that in Genesis 1:1, where it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, that there was before Adam was created, before Lucifer fell and became who we call Satan or the deceiver today, there was another world at that time in which he lived in. And that world was pretty close to our world insofar as there were buildings and there was trade and and you can look that information up in the Bible. So that's all there. And then it says in the second verse that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. That word there is chaos. So some people think that original creation Satan ruled over, he fell, that was destroyed, and him coming back when God planted a garden in Eden was his way of getting back into this earth plane. So I guess, I mean, of course, we're all speculating right now, so this goes right along those lines. If that's the case, who knows what kind of beings existed during that first period of time that ended with chaos and destruction in Genesis 1:2. So I would leave it at that.
All right. Ronnie, what do you
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Lawrence.
Well, I was thinking logically about it when you mentioned something earlier, Laurie, about the oceans where you've got these places like the Mariana Trench. And I'm thinking that when the Earth was younger, there weren't any oceans. It was just all, there was rain, obviously, but it was just all vegetation on a beautiful, pristine Earth. And then what happened was they were excavating huge areas, and then when the flood came, we got the oceans, because in the flood you've got the dove on the mountain or some bird that they left off the ark to see whether the waters had receded. And I think that if we can go and look at the bottoms of the oceans, we're going to see all these excavations there, which is why some of them are so deep, is because they took all the material away.
Yeah, I could.
Is his timeline correct? Because something glitched when he was talking about the order of things there, to me.
Yeah, pre-flood. Yeah.
Pre-flood.
I mean, well, the Bible talks about mountains all the time, but
right.
if we're to assume that the mountains that we think are mountains now are all huge trees that have been, carved out over the years, leaving the exposed fibers of the trees, which which look like rocks to us, then but by the time
we could exchange the word mountain for tree, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's pre-Bible time that all this was going on. It had to be because.
Well, no. I'd like to interject there, Lawrence. If I could read a few of these verses from the Bible, like Kings 3:25, it says, "Thus they destroyed the cities, and each one threw a stone on every piece of good land and filled it, so that they stopped all the springs of water and felled all the good trees, until Kil-Haresh only they left its stones. However, the slingers went about it and struck it," and on and on. "For I set apart destroyers against you, each with his weapons, and they will cut down your choicest cedars, and here's an answer, and throw them on the fire."
Burn them
Yeah.
up.
But how would they
Well,
mine
maybe
under
that's
the
where all
oceans?
that carbon came from that the original video maker talks about, that is in all that ice that
The
holds
carbon, yeah.
more content of carbon. Of course, when did we go from silicon to carbon? That's where we would have to figure out when the change occurred.
Well, that's why I'm proposing that the volcanoes were meant to cause a global winter. A worldwide winter. And yeah, it's been a long time since I said that.
Yeah, well, we're celebrating ourselves. It's okay.
It's basically because of this new information that's come to light. It's kind of teeming with excitement, because I can see it clearly. They cut the trees down and burn them to mock the creation. And on the other hand, it also states that the New Jerusalem is going to come down and set upon a flat plain. All the mountains will be made plain, and all the hills will be cut low. And these are also Revelation verses. So it's no stranger to the Bible that like on and on and on and on, he's talking about all of his forests. "And I cut down its tall cedars and its choice cypresses, and I entered the farthest lodging place of the thickest forest." Like, these are from the Torah, the Old Testament. So over and over and over, we're finding hundreds of Bible verses that actually match the video maker's proposal.
So, all right, Ronnie. Well, what were the mountains in the Bible then? If this catastrophe had not happened, where did those mountains come from?
Well, they were hills, right? Like a city set up on a high hill.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a difference between a hill and a mountain, obviously. My father used to be a big stickler about that. He'd say, "Oh, look at that mountain." "No, that's a hill." "Oh, look at that hill." "No, that's a mountain." So it does have something to do with the height and the makeup of which one you call what. And the same thing with mesas, and what was the other one? The word mesa and plateau.
Plateau,
Have a
yeah.
difference in size also.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question then, because I don't really think I've had a good answer from this one yet. At the time of Adam and Eve, yeah, was that at that time the Earth as it is now, with mountains and things, or was that just pure vegetation?
All right, I remember now what got me. You said about blah, blah, blah earlier, and it rained. Well, I'm sure there was rain and whatever. According to what I've been told and what I figured out, there was no such thing as rain from the sky as we know it prior to the flood. There was dew, and there was water that came up out of the ground.
That watered the vegetation.
That watered the vegetation from the ground. But there was no rain that fell from the sky prior to the flood. That is what freaked everybody out, because Noah said it's going to rain, water's going to fall from the sky, and it's going to flood the earth. And everyone mocked him.
So
Mock us now.
Can I just clarify a point then? So the rain from the sky for the flood was let out by God from some vault above the earth
and below.
And below.
Yeah. And below.
Shut up out of the ground, just like geysers that you would see out in Yosemite.
All right. Well, is it possible that at the time of the flood, the rain that came down, or the water that was let down, was it that actually created the oceans?
That's a very good possibility.
It's possible, yeah.
More than highly likely, yes.
And some people refer to that rain as the breaking of the firmament.
Of course, the Bible says that God separated the land of, the waters from the waters. So there's water under us, our level, and there's water above us. And some people even constitute that our atmosphere is considered a layer of water, okay? But when you divide the waters from the waters, the land, the earth, see, there's another thing. Everybody's like, the earth is the earth. Okay, but the earth is actually the dirt that's not in the water. That's the earth. That's
All right. Let me ask the panel a question. We've got the Grand Canyon. Now, was the Grand Canyon around at the time of Adam and Eve, or did that come later?
I would say the Grand Canyon would have been here before Adam and Eve, but from what I can relate to the timeline, Adam and Eve, relative to their time, were created in the Garden of Eden, which is a specific spot. We're not there. We've never been there. We got kicked out when we fell. Okay, that would be the biblical timeline. So the Garden of Eden is someplace else than where we are, as far as I'm concerned. We are east of Eden, whatever that means.
Well, another question then. Obviously, when you look, for those of you, you know, who are watching this hangout, watch the entire video, because, you know, even the guy speaks in broken English. You can make out what he's saying. Did man, as it is now, you know, men who are 6 foot tall and women who are 5'6" or whatever, did they inherit an earth that had already been butchered by all this excavation, or did that come later?
I'm gonna state that the Bible clearly, emphatically states that then you shall strike down every fortified city and every choice city, and fell every good tree, and stop all springs of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones. So it looks like the Bible, at least in the Old Testament, they were crying out, "Oh Lord," to the oaks and the cedars, and basically, I guess they're stating that the tyrants of the day, which it states in one of the scriptures, are the ones who've cut down all these trees and turned them to stone.
Yeah. Well, I've read somewhere.
Look at it this way, Lawrence. Look at it this way. Okay, here's Eden. It's always backwards for me. I hate that. Okay, so here's Eden, and here's Adam and Eve, and here's where we are. Okay.
Yeah.
All this stuff that was going on over here was going on over here, outside of Eden. It could have been happening at the same time. It could have happened before. And then when we got kicked out to the wasteland, isn't there something like that? We got kicked out of Eden, east of Eden, to the not so nice land.
Well,
The wilderness, that's everywhere.
East of Eden, yeah. So is East of Eden up at the past the North Pole then? Is East North?
No, east of Eden is where we are.
That's right. The sun comes up east out of Eden to run its course throughout the earth, traveling from Eden.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is, where we are is where all this stuff was going down. Okay. Eden was a separate place. Let's just say it was Shangri-La. Okay. And they didn't have any of the, you know, desolation that apparently happened here, and or the whole thing was desolate, and God grew up Eden out of the desolation. I mean, you go and completely burn down a forest. I mean, burn it to the ground. Okay, it takes a little while, but little saplings come up and little seedlings start to grow, and the animals move back in, and all that starts to happen. That's where we are now, according to what I think the video maker is trying to say. That
Well,
we grew up out of desolation.
Well, if I could just interject,
Okay, sure.
actually, we had a fire pit at my cottage at the lake house, and I had to move it, so I distributed the ashes amongst where I had it, and I put sod down in seed, and I could tell you right off the bat that it actually doubled the growth of the grass. So out of ashes, plant life thrives.
Right.
It's the building blocks of life. But as for your question about Eden, I strongly disagree with you. I think there are still the tall trees in Eden which bear fruit of all kind. I think the earth was beautiful like Eden, and I think while we've been asleep, they've mined, raped, and pillaged the land. And very simply put, as we sit here and argue with other so-called truth seekers about the shape of our world, these very same people are still actually mining and raping the world.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I agree with that. And on a side note, one of the reasons why they don't want us to know about the gift of the trees. The trees are living. They were originally designed, I think, to be collectors of information and collectors of history and of the knowledge. And they, they talked about that in the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, that the Ents were, wise and knew about the past and the history. There's so many little hints all over the place, which is exactly what we've been used to that happening, with regards to all of these other conspiracies. So, I'm going to show something real quick. This is this is the Avatar wiki page, okay? Avatar the movie. And if anybody saw it, and I think most people saw it, it describes all about the trees and the village and where the wisdom of the trees and how magical and electrical connectivity, and they learned from them and they got their power and their strength for them. So, there's been quite a few of these kinds of movies made. The Transformer movie, where they show the giants that are, big machines, basically. And in the one, what's it called?
Exodus as well. The recent Exodus, where they showed the rocks as being the fallen.
Yeah. Can we just talk about the giants a bit? Because Laurie and Jim, you seem to know a lot more about them. Can I just share a screen? Because I wanted to show you something. I've just got some pictures of giants here.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Be ready you're going to be on camera and you're going to go off in a million things before Lawrence hits the screen share button. So watch.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, you did it! All right.
That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
Hey, Lawrence. Go ahead.
There we go. So I can't read that. I've got another one here. Let me just see if I can make that bigger. So yeah, so looking at that, these are skeleton figures of ones that they've actually found, and they've put dates on them. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But we've got present day man of 6 foot, and then we've got 15-foot man, Turkey, found in the late 1950s, Maximus Thrax, Caesar of Rome, 235 AD, Goliath, 10'6", King of Basham, I think that is, 12 foot, 19'6", 1577 AD, 23-foot man, 1456 AD, 25'6" man from France, and 36-foot man, 650 BC. And then you go on this skeletons page. You can just
wait. Where was that 36-foot man found?
Uncovered by an earthquake in the Bosphorus.
Bosphorus, okay.
Now let me just go back to the other page on the giant skeletons. Let's have a look. Giant skeletons, because you can see some of the size of these skulls. So by some reason, the giants, they were scaled down over a period of time. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah. They seem to get smaller.
So you look at the size of some of these things. Now look at that. You've got a man, and the skull is several times bigger than the man. I mean, I don't think these excavations
I have to jump in here and say a few of those are hoaxes, but go ahead because
a lot
of them have been rebuked.
I can't believe that all of these are fakes. Why would they?
Because they fake Bigfoot and they fake every other kind of thing. But you can pretty much rest assured that there's some giant bones in the basement of the Vatican.
Yeah. So, all right, let me just come out of that now. So I was looking at it, well, not today, but a few months back, and apparently, at the time of Adam and Eve, Adam was supposedly 120 feet tall, and Eve was 75 foot tall. So, do you think that Adam and Eve were carbon-based or silicon-based? That is a
I really
question.
don't go for that with the height, simply because that would be one of the things that probably would have been talked about quite a bit, looking back on the ancestry of mankind. That Adam and Eve were, gigantic uh, individuals, and then it would be hard to say that. Well, how do you compare what's the giants and what's the man if we're all supposed to be the same, height?
Right. I would have to interject also there that they're supposed to be direct lineage from Adam to Jesus. So Jesus would have to have been of silicon-based lineage, and that wouldn't make any sense from a biblical standpoint, would it?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't. I have a few thoughts about. Men used to live longer, obviously, than we do now. It seems that what we call DNA is breaking down over time, not getting stronger. So it's possible that this happened with the giants too. It could be that there were different types of. We know there's different types of beings in that are called angels. They're not all the same. They have different categories of them. It could be that the first group actually made it with females live, and then the second group, who knows? Maybe they used some kind of artificial insemination so they wouldn't fall under the same judgment as the first group. But whatever the case, I think they were of a different line and they produced a different size offspring. That's just how I've speculated it. But
well, also, it's obvious that human women, if they were even bigger than me or us, human women wouldn't have been able to birth giants out of the gate. Okay, they would have had to grown into giants. So that would be some giantism type mutation, correct?
well,
Jim, how big is a qubit?
let's look it up.
Ronnie, what do you got? Jump in here and say, rebut whatever if you have a different viewpoint, please.
Well, this is an ongoing heated debate amongst the Christian and atheist community, and I guess Nephilim followers as well. Many people have stated that the Watchers were just simply men that were living on a mountain that came down from the mountain and begat ungodly things which they weren't prescribed to. But it's quite clear in Enoch that he states that the angels fell and that they changed their estate and they sinned against the women, the men, the field, and the animals. So basically, in my opinion, from an unbiased standpoint, the very could have been a type of DNA. Maybe the gene that stops gigantism was taken out when the two mixed. So that maybe the angels weren't giants, but their offspring were.
Yeah, I've got something here. I've just done a general search on it, and it says that Adam was 60 cubits in length, which apparently is 90 feet tall. This is not from the Bible; it's from Prophet Muhammad, but I've seen it from other sources as well, which are giving figures in that sort of scale, which is 90 feet tall. It's pretty tall, isn't it? I mean, if you were 90 feet tall, what were you going to weigh? You're going to weigh about 50 tons, aren't you? I mean, a whale's only like 100 foot long, and that weighs like 150 tons. These are absolutely enormous beings, aren't they?
Yeah, well, the other thing would have been that God killed one animal to make the clothing for Adam. That would have had to have been a huge animal also to cover a creature that big. And according to Jewish lore, I guess you would call it, that cloak that Adam originally wore was handed down to Enoch and to. So if they were all different sizes, then you can see a discrepancy there. So that's why I really don't.
I've got the length of it here now, Jim. 1 cubit is 45 centimeters. So 2.4 centimeters is an inch. So it's about 2 foot. So 60 cubits would be 120 feet, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. So God created Adam and Eve as giants.
Well, okay, so let's follow along that premise. Let's just say, okay, everything was giant then. Adam and Eve were giant, plants were giant, everything was giant. Then it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, if everything's big, then it all works in symmetry. But if this tree and that animal are real big and the people aren't, or everything else isn't, you see what I'm saying? That doesn't seem like a really logical creation. So is the whale left over from the previous, version of something? I don't know. I mean, it is interesting that the whale and the dolphin and a couple of other sea creatures are mammals, but other than that,
well, yeah, I've got some evidence here which would probably indicate that the sizing down of the giants, they got quite a bit smaller by the time of Noah, because the Bible says that the length of Noah's ark was 300 cubits, which is 600 feet long. Well, 600 cubits isn't going to be big enough to house giants the size of Adam and Eve, is it?
Right. No.
So they're a whole lot smaller by then. So what was happening? There must have been a lot of genetics going on there to get people from 100 feet plus down to what we are now.
Well, I mean, we already know there's other discrepancies, not discrepancies, I don't even like to use that word, but anomalies with regards to some scripture that talks about, and when so-and-so left such and such, they hung out with these people, and it's like, hold on, where did those people come from, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like Cain, for example. Yeah. I'm proud I thought of that at the same time Jimmy did, because he's a little quicker at that kind of thing than I am. So, if Cain took off and was hanging out with the rebels and the hoods over here east of Eden, then where'd they come from? And that's always been an anomaly to the story.
Well, everything is supposed to reproduce after its own kind. So it's hard to see giants mating with giants and then a 6-foot man coming out of it. In order for that to happen, you would have to see it be a gradual decline in size over a period of years.
Yeah, and we don't know how many years that was. I mean, because, it's a little bit baffling when you read, well, so-and-so, Methuselah, lived what, 600 and something years?
Yes, well, actually, if you do a research into the Neanderthals, their skulls, their teeth, and their height, and their width, and their breadth was actually quite a bit larger than us. And the beautiful thing about our body is, as we age, we actually get stronger. And I believe that there's been a curse or a time period that was put upon man. I cannot explain why, but if you look to Enoch 7:16, it says, all of the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And the women became pregnant, and bare great giants, whose height were 3,000 ells, which equals 450 feet, who then consumed all the acquisitions of men, and men could no longer sustain them. And the giants turned against them, and devoured mankind. They devoured against the birds, the beasts, the reptiles, fish, and one another's flesh. They drank blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. So therefore, I believe this would be the time when the flood came.
Yeah. And did we get an answer? Did we get any consensus on whether Adam and Eve were silicon based? Because if you think about these trees, if they were 50 miles high, then carbon based, that presumably they can't get that high because they wouldn't have the structural strength. But when you look at these petrified forests and the structure of these silicon based trees, they've got to be a whole lot stronger than the trees are now to sort of be that high up carrying that weight.
All right, well, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in here on that one. Hold on, I got this one. Okay, fell. We have to keep going back to when we fell, or when man fell, okay? So let's just go with Adam and Eve were created as silicon-based beings, okay? Or silicon more percentage of, okay? Let's just go with that. And then when Satan got the thing and the apple and the falling, okay? Falling means sinning, okay? And it also means to a, you fell. It's a lesser degree. So why not that when man got kicked out of Eden, kind of almost had to terraform to be able to live in this other version of style basis of world, okay? The carbon based. How about that?
Sorry, Laurie, what do you mean by terraform?
Transhuman, terraforming, all these words that are pop words now, where people say, oh, well, this is why they're spraying chemtrails, because they're terraforming the earth for maybe the giants to come back, because they do thrive better in that environment than what humans do, for example. So I would call it a form of transhumanism. When we fell, that we degraded, I guess you would call it. That maybe the silicon-based was better than the carbon-based is, stronger something. Better, would it be a better conductor of electricity? Does anybody know that?
Well, the giants go hand in hand with the much longer lifespan, don't they? So presumably a silicon-based life form would be much bigger and stronger and have a bigger longevity. And when the silicon was scaled down or removed, then we ended up where we are today.
All right. Well, how many generations were there between Adam and Noah? Who's got that?
There's
You're
8.
a biblical expert.
8. Adam and Noah. And they were long generations, because we know Methuselah was like the longest living man, right? Hundreds and hundreds of years. So these are long generations. In comparison.
There's about an 1,100-year gap between the birth of Adam and the birth of Noah.
1,100-year gap.
You're not saying, though, that this transformation from giants to what we are now was some kind of evolution. Surely it had to be some kind of genetic manipulation by interbreeding with whatever to get down where we are now.
So it was 10 generations, 10 families, and it's their names also spelled out: man appointed mortal sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing rest of comfort. But the problem I'm having with the discussion of the giants and Adam and Eve, I don't believe. I believe we've devolved. The law of entropy kind of shows us everywhere that we can observe that things do decay over time. But I don't think humans were ever giant. At least, the line that I believe that I'm of. That's just my opinion.
You go, Ronnie. I wasn't a giant.
But I'm also quite a big guy myself, 6'3", 240. But what I'm stating is I believe that our bodies were made purer, and I don't know if what they've done to the earth would acclimatize. See, what I believe is after the Nephilim, the children of the holy watchers that took women to be their wives, I believe once those giants died, those spirits were then bound to earth, and they are the principalities of the air. So these spirits are wanting to desolate and just destroy everything that God made beautiful. That's what I see.
The other thing was the giants were recognized by having an extra finger and an extra toe. And legend has it that in North America, that's where the Indians have legends about giants running on the plains.
Well, that's why you wave hello, so you can count the fingers, right?
That's why you go, how?
Yeah, to see how
many fingers you got.
What line or what lineage they were.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's get away from the giant people for a minute now, and let's go back to the trees and the land. Okay, um, so so I want to bring it back around to, okay, we've been working all these months on trying to define what the not the map, but the surface of Earth is that we live on. Okay, so we went through all of these exercises, and we came down to what we thought was a pyramid shape, and so on. All right, so it's obvious that there's no place right now that these giants could be hiding on our territory. Okay, so where did they go? Was every last one of them killed? What was, did they move on to another part of the patchwork quilt? Uh, beyond the ice border, or here or there somewhere? Is there, more pouches, and are the giants over there now? Is that part? I mean, I even ask all these questions of myself for the last couple of days. Is that what the Antarctica Treaty is about? And I've speculated that before, actually, that perhaps the giants are hiding beyond the ice that we can access, and that the treaty was created like, okay, here's the deal. We'll live on this crappy regrowing patch of dirt, and you guys have to stay out of here and stay over there, and you don't come back over here because you've already wrecked it all, and you go someplace else and find whatever you want. And look at all of the mythology of the space people came here, the Anunnaki, and they mined for gold and monatomic gold or whatever, and they're kind of going to come back and they're going to try to mine again. What were these guys mining for?
Well, I could like to interject. Lori, I think that is just a slight cover-up to the conspiracy of the truth that the line of Cain, or these demonic spirits that are trapped here, were never Anunnaki. They were just simply Nephilim, and they've been mining and destroying the earth the entire time, and just simply saying that it was a foreign, just as they mine today.
Okay, so mining, and I mean, you don't go through the exercise of mining because it's a lot, building machines and ripping through stuff and having to do something with the, detritus, the offal, and so on. Okay, unless there's some valuable resource there that you want. I mean, unless you just want to go ripping everything up and ripping everything to shreds for the hell of it, I doubt that. So is there another place where they came from, and they came here and mined, and they bagged it all up like we do precious stones and tea, and go back and trade it in the place where Jimmy was talking about, where they, before we were here, they had business and trade and so on. So, are we now living on the, I used to go when I was a kid to the stripper pits. The stripper pits were what was left over from coal mining. And that you would fill up with water, and there would be these lakes, and we would go swim there.
Yeah, I've just picked up a little snippet now. So, Laura, you're thinking that Eden is beyond the ice somewhere, and I've just picked up a snippet, and I'll read it out to you. It says, one of the charts by Gerhardus Mercator, the map maker, the 16th century Flemish cartographer and geographer, shows a huge continent lying in the vicinity of the North Pole. The land is an archipelago composed of several islands divided by deep rivers. A mountain sits in the center of the land. According to legends, the ancestors of Indo-Europeans lived near Mount Meru. The question is, how did that land appear on the chart? There was no information whatsoever regarding the Arctic regions during the Middle Ages. We have some reasons to believe that Mercator had used an ancient chart, the one that is mentioned in his letter dated 1580, That chart shows a continent located in the center of the Arctic Ocean. It was ice-free on the chart. Mercator's chart seems to be based on the ancient chart. So, and there was, you know, when all this stuff about the hollow Earth was out there, this was all sort of related to the North Pole as well.
Right.
So I think there may be, well, some truth and lies in there, but
well, and wouldn't that be a perfect way to do it? To say, you know, well, this guy's over here going, oh, there's this mystical land inside the Earth, and this guy over here is going, you know, blah blah blah, Mount Meru, and so, but all of these places, Atlantis, you know, I mean, you can go look at a globe on Google Earth and spin it around and see under the water where they have, you know, made the terrain at the bottom of the ocean under the water. We don't have any idea whether that's correct or not, but there's all kinds of places where, ooh, this is pretty close to the surface, and ooh, this is in between where these things separated, and could that have been, people have been speculating where was the lost city of Atlantis forever. And so, you know, we're at a pretty big loss at being able to try to piece those things together. But I mean, you know, let's bring in Greek mythology with you know, the gods who came down from Mount Olympus, and you know, few of them had relations with the women, and some of the women had relations with some of the male gods, and vice versa. So, I mean, Poseidon was the god of the ocean, and he came up out of the water, and you know, if you were sailing along, you're like, oh, I gotta pray that Poseidon doesn't come and stick me with his trident. And so here's all of these old myths, some of which may be true. This is what's bizarre about it. You know, in the valley of the jolly ho ho ho, green giant, okay, and the little green sprout. Where does this stuff come from? Like you said, Jack and the Beanstalk, 5,000-year-old children's story, which is really kind of creepy. But so, what were you talking about, Ezekiel?
Well, if you read in the book of Ezekiel, around chapter 27 and 28, there's judgments that come out. One is against Tyre, the land, which is where what modern Lebanon is. Mm-hmm. It says the people and describes the nature of what the people were like, what their character was like. Then comes a judgment against the prince who was over those people, and it talks about what he was like. He and the people were just like the same, except this was the prince that was over them. And then finally, the final judgment winds up against the king of Tyre, who's over the prince, and this is a spirit being, and it describes Satan in a pre-fallen state. And basically what it says, if you read the 28th, I'm not going to read it, but you have to read it in a few different translations and compare the words to one another. It paints a picture that he had sanctuaries or warehouses, and that he traded. It doesn't say what he traded, but in order for him to trade, there's got to be somebody to trade with, right? In order to have warehouses, there's got to be a lot of people to trade with and a lot of things being traded. And it says through violence, he filled up his sanctuaries. So if you take that, and then his personality is also reflected in the prince, which is also reflected in the people. So each one took on the personality of what was over them, all the way up to that final, right up to Lucifer. So it's pretty interesting because the more you look at Flat Earth, the more you look at these stories, it appears like we're living in more of a realm than just a mechanical system. And I think, you know, we basically, I'm just changing the words to look at the same thing from a different perspective. But I think that reading that, again, it's Ezekiel 28, and reading a few different translations, so, you know, you get a few different words in there to compare one to the other. And you come away with a picture that all of these things, like these trees, I could see that these mesas were once trees. I mean, now it looks obvious. Now it's hard to look at something with a flat top on it and see it as anything else than a tree that was cut down. What did they use trees for? The same thing we use trees for. They used it for building. They used it for fuel. They
Making
used it for
boats.
making their things. So I think that everything that you need to know is reflected in what we can see. It's just like a shadow of what all of these other questions that we have. It's all there. It's just hard to piece it together.
Okay, so go back just for a second for clarity, because I'm not really understanding why you were talking about Ezekiel and then the prince below him and then the people below him. I don't understand why you went there. Was that because Ezekiel is a giant?
Well, we're talking to no.
I mean, not Ezekiel.
No. We're talking about these different sections of time. We're talking about the garden versus the time of between the giants and when the flood came, and then what happened afterward, all the way what we're up to now.
Okay.
So I don't think there was anything really that different,
About the system?
how it all works. It all fits together the same way as it did then. It's just the appearance is different now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just found another, found another interpretation, which is saying that Eden is at the North Pole, and the South Pole is, or beyond the South Pole, is where the demons or hell is.
Okay. Ronnie.
Yeah, that would be Lord Stephen Christ's interpretation with the celestial. Yeah, the celestial sphere would be north,
Right.
and I'd have to say that I still need my 4 cardinal directions.
Right. Okay, so Ronnie, when you saw this information, okay, when you watched the video and you saw this information, did it solidify your overall accumulated worldview of what all the things that you had read and learned about in the past, or did it solidify that, or do you think that it caused more questions?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Lawrence and you. I'm not trying to butter you guys up, but all due respect, the two of you are always constantly sharing amazing things. Now, what I could honestly say is, when I saw that title from Lawrence, "Be Prepared to Be Mind Blown," I guess leading up to this situation, I was quite laughing at that because every time someone says "be prepared," it usually fails. But I was absolutely mind blown. After getting by the Russian accent, which is okay because in Toronto where I live, we have every accent, so I could get by it. I was just blown away with the observations and the in plain sight things I was seeing. But for me, I guess the question that you ask is so great because it did lead to bigger questions. If these trees were that large and we were able to live amongst them, it would only lead me to believe that there's more land. And for me, that's a huge step because, I'm thinking there is nothing beyond the North and the South Pole, so maybe there is.
Okay, and I would concur with that quite a bit because, I think that if I were going to make a creation that was an entire ecosystem, okay, like we have now, I think we have an ecosystem on such a reduced scale to what it was before. And I don't know why I feel that, but I feel like, when you go into an old growth forest, there's an ecosystem on a tree stump. Okay? There's a microcosm of an ecosystem, living around a rotting tree stump versus, you see a grand old live oak tree, for example, and on that tree, there's animals, vegetables, minerals. There's like a whole thing, there's moss growing on there, there's insects of every kind, there's birds with, babies in a nest, and there's squirrels scampering around, and, that's how I think the world was like pretty much everywhere. And I think that it would have all sort of almost butted up into each other. there would be a canopy of these trees. And I have been in old growth forests before. There is an energy there. It is, it is sort of a solemn place, but at the same time, it feels like there's people talking. I don't even know how to describe it. So there, we haven't even talked about what the root system of these trees would have been like, okay, and how far into the ground they would have reached. One of the things that I know about trees is that the root system on a width scale is supposed to be about the same width as the canopy, okay? So that's underground and not probably quite as tall as the tree, depending on where it's growing on, but think about the height of the tree. The tap root is supposed to be pretty equal to the height of the tree. So what does that say about how deep the earth is? I keep going back to that Kola deep hole drill that the Russians did for years. I don't even remember how many years, like a decade. They drilled and drilled and drilled, and they only got 8 miles into the ground. And we're looking at the Grand Canyon in comparison, and they scraping and mining and so on. What happened between then and now, and why can't we drill any further than that?
I think the question is what would have caused the trees of that time that we're looking at now to change their whole structure? That's the mystery.
Well, and it would be the difference between a silicon-based structure and a carbon-based. Okay, Lawrence has got a video he wants to play because he keeps grabbing the screen. So go, Lawrence, play it.
What video would that be?
I don't know. You're playing something in the background and it keeps grabbing the screen.
No, I was just.
Okay, you're going to have to drop out, Lawrence, and come back in because you're breaking up. Sorry. Okay, so Ronnie, what do you think about that aspect of it? Think about the fact that, okay, like say for example, some part of the earth where the land is, they have what's called bedrock, okay? Other places, like where I live in Florida, we don't have that. We have sand for like a long way down, okay? And the same with, let's say, the Mojave Desert or the Sahara Desert, Sonora Desert, sand and more sand. How do you relate? Maybe relate to me what you think kind of Armageddon happened that created this do-over.
Well, that again leads back to the Nephilim and the evil thoughts of man. I'm pretty sure that the desolation, Laurie, it's almost, it's like if these trees were really 60 miles tall and we lived in this vast, beautiful, world. It almost feels like we're in a wasteland.
We are. I mean, when you compare, look at what they're doing now. You go out to. I took a trip out to Oregon a decade or so ago, and I'm driving with my friend, and I'm looking at all the trees and the old growth forest and so on, and then suddenly you come around the backside and it's like clear cut. Okay, it's just gone down to nothing. And then they come in and they put these little saplings in there, and they start, we're replenishing the forest and we're starting over. You can't. That takes a long, long, long time. Okay? Mm-hmm. Same thing they're doing in the Amazon jungle, mowing and slashing and burning and cutting out wood, and then it's going to take years and years. So I think it should be obvious by now that we have very little land left for old growth forests. And another interesting thing that I'd like you guys to talk about is that the video maker scoffs at things like the United States national parks making, national parks out of these areas that were mined, for example, and logging of the last of the great old sequoia trees and building little fences around them and say, oh, look, we're saving the trees. And when did that happen? I mean, you can't take anything out of a national forest or like, you can't go picking up a bunch of rocks and walking out of there with them. People do, but if you get caught, put that down, leave that there. So don't you find that curious that the United States has made national land monuments and national landmarks out of these areas that are what would be considered the scars on the land?
It's sadistic. My first reaction to it was, oh my, how the land must bear witness to this desolation. How could we murder someone and then, I don't know. I got to think of a better analogy. It's just so sadistic.
Well, it's kind of like taking, killing a beautiful animal and taking it to the taxidermist and having it stuffed and displayed in your living room. It's a little creepy, but I know people have been doing it forever. And please don't leave 10 comments about, taxidermy's my business. What are you trying to do? Ruin my business or whatever. But the idea is that we're supposed to be living in harmony with the land, and we're supposed to be, I never forget the Iroquois, for example. They live on a part of the land, and they live in movable teepees, and they can move their whole camp and their whole people in a matter of days, and then they go set up someplace else. They don't put in sewer systems and water mains and big buildings built out of brick and so on and so forth. They leave no damage to the land that can't heal itself when they move on to the next place. So okay, so let's take it from, okay, so this area was desolated, and then now it's growing back like a burnt forest growing back again, and it has recovered in many places. It's very beautiful in many places, but there's another aspect to this that I am still mystified by, that they bothered to come up with these stories about volcanoes and mesas and magma and all this that created these anomalies. The Colorado was the Snake River that made Snake River, right? That made the Grand Canyon. No. I'm riding my bicycle down the street, and all of a sudden you just push me off my bicycle into the side of the road. If you're going to be on here, you're going to have to play along. Let Lori talk for just a minute. Sometimes. Okay, now that you interrupted, go ahead. Works every time, doesn't it?
No, one thing we didn't talk about that he talked about in that video was about the technology, the building technology. He gave examples of bridges built out of one solid piece of granite and the tools that were used and how we don't have those tools any longer. And he talked about some type of catastrophic event happening. What was it, the early 1800s, did he mention in the video?
Yeah, he talked about a nuke.
The year of winter.
Remember that?
It was the year of winter, and I've actually studied this. I believe it was 1816. Don't quote me completely on it, but I remember that North Americans were foretold to have actually become, eat their own.
And it's just been left out of the history books. Why?
Well, I learned about it in, Canadian, school, so it can't be completely hidden because we were told that the winter lasted for over a year, and then if you watch the Game of Thrones, the long winter is coming. How they've continued to, and the seven seas, and there's all these. Also in the Game of Thrones, they've talked about from the east as far as to the west, and that whole concept. But the whole the land, though, you know, I'd like for you guys and the listeners. I'm going to be looking in the comments because it's interesting. On the last show, I was talking to everybody about watching how the trees grow towards the sun, and then was it 2 days later, Lawrence was sharing this revelation here. You know, it's just quite amazing. If I might add that, you know, if these trees were able to reach 60 miles high, you know, what kind of life would we have? What kind of lush, you know, talk about global warming or tree huggers. What do we have left to hug, Lawrence?
Well, I have something real quick on that, because you know what? Think about it. If the trees were huge on the land before the devastation happened, okay? That all could have happened prior to the sun and moon even being created, because God created light, right? According to Genesis, God created light, and then things started growing and happening, and then he created the sun and the moon. So there was a light enough to grow plants prior to the sun even.
Yeah, when I used to do talks about oxygen therapies, I used to go around doing presentations to live audiences, and I bought this book called Flood Your Body with Oxygen, and you know, it's several hundred pages long, and there was a peer-reviewed journal. Now obviously you can take official science with a pinch of salt, but I don't think they're going to lie about everything. And what they did, they found some air bubbles that, it says 80 million years ago, I don't believe it's that long ago, but they found some air bubbles trapped in amber, and they analysed the oxygen content, and today we're looking at 21% oxygen typically in the air that we breathe, but these air bubbles that were trapped in the amber, they were showing 30%, which would tie in with all these huge trees, because trees, you know, they take in carbon dioxide and give off the oxygen that we breathe. So there is good evidence that we did have an Earth, should I say, that was much richer in oxygen than today, which would enable people to live longer and things to grow bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard
Very
that.
good book if you want to read it. It's called Flood Your Body with Oxygen. This guy was sent to prison for this, because this, I mean, if you look at the Hebrew translation of ozone, ozone is actually active oxygen. It translates as the breath of God. So check the book out. Brilliant book. Ed McCabe.
Okay, so you know what? I'm at this point. Where does Lawrence?
Is it me again?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to drop out. It's just mute, please, for a second.
Okay.
Oh, I think it healed itself. It's usually right after you get done talking and then when I start talking. So anyway, sorry. Boy, I had a point to make too.
It was good.
Oh, the diamond. Okay. You're going to get it after this is over. Okay, so the diamond shaped map. Okay. Last week, before we were so rudely interrupted by this mega dump of information, we were talking about the diamond-shaped map and how that might fit into a square, and whether or not maybe there was a pyramid over the top of it. Does this all go out the window, or is each realm perhaps shaped to go, is it a patchwork, you know? You fly over the land in a plane just high enough to see the land going by underneath of you, and it always looks like a patchwork quilt. Is that what the realm possibly is like? And
Go ahead, Lawrence. You want to answer first?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you brought up that tesseract the other day, Laurie, then yeah, I think the other realms are within the tesseract. You know, and obviously they don't want us to access them for, you know, presumably. I mean, I think these places may be where all these famous people who we know haven't died, like David Bowie. We know the same guy was on TV talking about himself after they faked his death. I'm sure all these people that give good service to the Illuminati are taken to some pristine part of the realms to live a long and happy life because they've given good service to them. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening.
So on in the movie The Lord of the Rings, what was the name of the place where the what were they, Morlocks or something? The horrible creatures, the orcs, something. Perhaps there's even worse destroyed places than this. Perhaps that's where hell's at. Think about that as far as a realm. What if there is literally a realm like ours, but it's hell? It's like
yeah,
horrible
we might be.
all the time, and maybe it was like where what our realm was like before God recreated it or replenished it is the word, I believe. And we got a do-over.
Well, in the book of Enoch, the archangel or the messenger of God takes Enoch and basically shows him these places. And when they go to hell, it's basically like they're under a wall of glass, and the people down there are thirsty, but they cannot drink, and they can see. So basically what I'm stating is that the Tesseract, basically layer upon layer upon layer, might actually be physically what we are in, but we can't perceive the other realms because our senses are wired to what we are able to see.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm down with that too.
It's all there. You're not capable of seeing it.
Okay, so what do we do with this new information, people? What do we do with it? How do we explain it to people who, people who are flat earthers seem to have grasped this pretty quick, and whether that is going to play into the hands of the media types who are going to say, well, you already were gullible and you already bought into that flat earth garbage, and now you're going to go ahead and start thinking that mountains are trees, and how much crazier can you get, blah blah. So how do we promote this? I think that I believe the email that I got from the creator of the video, his email name was David. So David in Cyrillic is what you see, I think, on the video, or I'm not really sure what the name of his channel is, but he said, do with it what you will. Here's all the photographs that I used and the content, and anybody that has downloaded it and the zip file has all of the same materials. He gave me the transcript of what he said all through the video, which, God love him, the transcription is still the way he talks. So things are out of, tenses are back and forth and so on. So what do we do with this? Do we promote his video and hope that it engages enough people? Because there has been a little bit of pushback from people saying, I can understand a thing he says, why don't you guys talk about this and remake this and blah blah.
Well, I would redo it and just play some music while it's on, and just put text on the screen, or do a voiceover. But the information on that video could be easily condensed down to about 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you take out the stuff that isn't necessary. And then that would probably get more views because people could actually make more sense of it because they understand what you're saying, and they'd watch it through to the end, because most people who actually look at it now, a lot of them will turn off after 5 minutes because they can't make head or tail of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because it's like broken English. I understand it, but a lot won't.
Well, I uploaded it 21 hours ago on this channel, and it has 824 views, and I didn't promote it in any way or anything like that. Let me go to his version real quick and see.
800.
Yeah. Let's see how many views he has on his now.
It must be getting on for 4,000 now.
It's got 3,842 views, and interesting, with all of the complaints about the accent and everything else, it has 366 thumbs up and 5 thumbs down. That's like off the scale unusual for a video like this, especially with Flat Earth in the title.
Yeah.
We only have 5 thumbs down.
Can I just present something very quickly, Laurie? Because
Sure.
you know we did start off with the flat Earth, and I've got some new information here now, which might help people understand what's been happening with the sun, because it's been talked about a lot lately with this, the summer solstice and people taking sun readings. And one group was supposed to be collating the information, but I haven't seen it as yet. So this may be new to some of you. Let me just share the screen and show you a couple of images that I've put together. Let me a second. So this is for a place called Nordkapp, which is at the north of Norway on the summer solstice. So that's where it is. It's inside the Arctic Circle, and these are if you were looking at time and date with the sun moving from east to west. So at the June solstice, it's over the Tropic of Cancer, and at 6 a.m. the sun should be from the southeast. At noon it should be from the south. 6 p.m. it should be from the southwest, and midnight it should be at west southwest, because that's where the sun actually is if we're using an east-west straight line. Okay, but when you look at the actual observations, if you're actually in Nordkapp, at 6 a.m. it's not southeast, it's east. At noon it's south. At 6 p.m. it's not southwest, it's west. And at midnight it's actually at north. So there's a bit of contradiction there. Now we know the sun isn't actually going north of the North Pole. So what I think's happening, and I'll bring up another little sketch now. I've got it. Let's have a look. Nordkapp. I've put it on the diamond map. I'll make this a bit bigger. So the only time that I think that Nordkapp is actually seeing the sun directly is at noon. And when it sees it at the other times, the sun is reflecting somehow. This is just a rough diagram. So at 6 a.m. they actually see it from the east. So I think the sun's hitting some magnetic boundaries and is reflecting from the east, and that's where they see it. Noon they see it directly. 6 p.m. it's reflected from the west, and at midnight it's reflecting twice. It's hitting the boundary there, and then it's hitting the boundary again, because and when you look at the midnight sun at midnight, it's much smaller. So I think every time the sun has to reflect, it reduces in size. So that's what I'm making of it. Now, obviously, it may be, there may be some other mechanism that does this, because people would say, well, why don't you see two suns? Why don't you see the actual sun and the reflected sun? Well, you do sometimes, and sometimes you see these pictures of the sun and then a smaller sun close by. So I think the smaller sun is the reflected sun. But in terms of the sun, when you're on the equator or between the tropics, when the sun's directly overhead, and you look at the light rays given off by the sun, you can only see them for about 6,250 miles. So that's why you get 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night, because the sun's doing about 1,000 miles an hour. So from sunrise to noon, and from noon to sunset, you've got a span of about 12,000 miles, which is half the day. So the sun is, I think it's only directly visible for 6,000 miles. But people are seeing the sun, they were much further away from 6,000 miles. So I'm thinking it's some kind of reflection. Now, if we actually go and take a look at where the sun actually appears to people in Nordkapp, I think I brought this up last week. Let's bring that up again. Here we go. Nordkapp, midnight sun. Hang on. Midnight sun at Nordkapp. Okay. Now look at the size of the sun. Yeah, you're seeing it at midnight at north, and it's smallest, and then from west to east, yeah, they're bigger. So it gets progressively smaller till it gets to the north. But when the sun is seen directly from the south, it's at its biggest. So if I can bring the other one up, if I can find it, there we go, Nordcap, midnight sun. There we go. Let me have a look. If I'll bring it up. Nordcap 1. Let's bring that one up. Oops, that's not the one. I know what it is. Nordcap Midnight Sun, Nordcap 1. Oh yeah, is that the one? Let's have a look. Yeah, so let me just enlarge this. Yeah, and you can see, so if you look at these pictures going across, you can't see that if they've got a time clock at the bottom, and the one that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the right, that's when the sun is at the highest point in the sky, and that is, well, and the one next to it, these here, the sun is obviously much bigger there, but if you look at going from midnight, you can see the sun is getting bigger as it gets higher in the sky. So some of these pictures of the sun are seen directly, and some of them are seen, in my view, they're seen as a reflection off the magnetic walls of the sides of the Earth, which we can't see.
So when the sun is in the orange section, where it's orange,
yeah,
what time is that?
That's round about midnight.
Okay, so that would be where it is reflecting off the wall.
I think that's a double reflection.
Double reflection off the wall in your other diagram.
I think that's 2 reflections.
Okay, so when I, remember I was making my little pyramid thing. I haven't had time to work on it much more, but I'm still going to go back to that. But when I ran the flashlight beam over the top of the pyramid, okay, I mean, I tried like going around the side, and I'm like, no, I don't think it's circles. So I don't think it's one reflection. I think when you actually look at the tesseract thing, image, it could be in another. It has to be in another cell. So even if you wanted to use that honeycomb idea, because I think a lot of times I see repeated in nature similar things. If we each are in a cell of the tesseract or some kind of a honeycomb effect in our realm, imagine the size of that big beast. When the sun would be moving past one, I mean, yeah, maybe have 2 points of reflection, and the color changes. Well, the color changes based on the angle of the light through what would be the equivalent of a prism wall, right? Because that's where we get back into that light spectrum thing, the Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, and violet. The lowest of the colors is the red and the orange and the yellow, and that's when it seems to be the most far away, right? So I still say I'm still going to hang with the diamond as the perimeter sort of shape of our realm, but I don't think it's the end of anything. I think it goes on. So this is where it gets weird with okay, now, is there a portal there, or is the whole wall a portal? I mean, Ronnie and I were talking earlier about the fact that no one's ever dug a tunnel between Russia and Alaska, that sort of 55-mile space. Why? I mean, no one's made a bridge because they've used the excuse, and it's a likely one, that you can't build a bridge across there because it freezes up and everything all the time, and it's no good. But to build a tunnel seems reasonable, even though they say, well, the amount of money to do it is just off the chart. But I don't think they can connect the two ends, to tell you the truth.
I think Ronnie's got something there, Laurie. Ronnie, have you got something to show us, mate?
Yeah, one sec. I'm just going to pull up. So, can everybody see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that I'm displaying? Is it a... Okay, so it's the foundations. So basically, this is I believe this is a German representation of the Earth's crust. So basically, this is a westerly or an easterly looking view. And the foundations or the walls theoretically could be these upcroppings. And what's interesting is they have other land masses to the right here, if you can see my pointer, which is interesting, you know, where there is said to be, let's say, warm air in Antarctica or other places. But I'm going to go to another screen share. This is just what I believe. So I believe that the Earth part that we stand upon is that shape. Now, do you see this picture of the temple?
Yeah.
So basically, you know, with going with my scripture as my foundation, it basically states that the sky or the heavens are as a vault or a tent that's been draped about us. And, you know, this ceiling in this temple depicts what I believe. So if you're on the equator, the tropics in between would be the checkerboard on the floor. The foundations would be the two, would be east and west here. And if you look to the ceiling, you can see there's a representation of a light moving across. That would be the sun's path. So what's interesting, though, is if we look to the north or the south, we see the circular stars. And when we look up or to the south from the north or from the north from the south, we see a whole story. Like right now, the sun rises with Leo, and the great square of Pegasus sets the night. And it's beautiful, the story that we could see on this vault if we look up in the sky. It's almost impossible to deny the fact that we're in some sort of, there's some sort of resemblance of this temple. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
That sounds very promising, that does, Ronnie. What's the big, ugly-looking beast that's at the end of the room?
What's that?
Is that some kind of Baphomet? You know, some kind of goat man or something? Or
up here?
No, go down a bit. Oh, that metallic thing. What's that?
This is an altar.
Oh, an altar, right? Okay.
So basically, the altar and the candles here would represent the gates.
Yeah.
From east to west, and the path of the sun and the stars.
Ronnie, look at the triangles all around the sides of the walls, and the triangle at the top of the altar.
Yeah, it's
the altering eye in the middle of it.
And you know, they didn't depict anything on here that you know wasn't supposed to be. And in the skies, in the ceilings, you can see chariots and the different constellations taking place. You know, it's going to be hard for anyone to sway me from thinking that this is a. I think this would be a four-dimensional representation of our realm.
Perhaps. Now, what is this place again?
This is a temple.
Is that a Masonic lodge?
Palazzo Raffia, the Galleria. So it definitely is a Masonic lodge, yes.
Yeah.
I don't.
Ronnie,
can you just floor goes it away?
Ronnie, can you just scan around that room again for us to have a closer look at it?
I don't support the Masons. I think they've occulted the true power and reality of our world, and you know they will be judged. So, where would we look? So they got a camera, or they've got lights shining on here. I don't know what this is a depiction of. I'd like to get a bit clearer of a picture.
And what's that flag?
Maybe Jimmy could know, or it looks Italianish.
Looks Italian to me. It's only been Italian or Mexican, right? With those colors.
Yeah. Is that at the Vatican?
Palestinian.
Not.
Red and green and white.
Yeah.
Or black.
No, it's red, green. It's got red and blue, and then green and white on the top, which it's weird. I'm surprised. I should have known a little bit more of this, but
Look at the Masonic.
What's that thing to the left that looks like a bit like a funny sort of cross? What's that?
Yeah,
That image. What is that?
Where is this located?
it's the
Right where you
Rosy
got your
Cross.
cursor down. What is that funny looking square thing? Yeah, that. What is?
I think this is
Which have the hangout.
Am I not talking? It's the Rose Cross.
yeah, the Rosicrucian. It also resembles the swastika in a bit too.
Okay, go to the other chair, Ronnie.
The other chair on the other side.
Yeah, what you got there?
We
Oh,
got a
look,
square and a
it's
compass.
there.
But again, you remember the depiction I showed you with the land and the sky above, right?
Yeah.
So, and then inside here we got a diamond or a square, right, in the middle of the compass. So who knows really what they're trying to depict? But
Well, somebody went to a great deal of trouble because I'm going to tell you what, as an artist and a faux finisher and a mural painter and not real awesome at the last one, I know that takes an incredible amount of time to paint all of that.
Yeah.
So that was either well paid for or well donated, one or the other.
Yeah, Ronnie, seriously, mate. If I were you, I would get some screenshots of that room. Thoughts on it. And make your video.
Lawrence. There's a website that he's got that he just had up there. Jimmy has pulled it up already, and it is a Masonic lodge, and there's all kinds of pictures of the inside of the walls and the paintings and the symbols that are in there. On that
Sorry,
website.
whose website is that?
It is, what is it?
All you have to do is look up Palazzo Raffia.
Palazzo, Palazzo, Raffia?
Yeah,
Roffia.
Oh, right. Well, if you get a chance, stick the link on the video so people can go and take a look for themselves.
Yeah, we will. So, okay, so we know that all of this stuff is, sorry, I forgot to take him off. We know all of this stuff is occulted and hidden and secret, and secrets make people more powerful. Having the ability to own information that others can't get their hands on allows those in control to control others, because if you control the narrative and you control the intelligence level, the knowledge of the masses, then you control them. And you know what, now that this information has gotten out or somebody's put it out there, I mean, who knows who's talked about it before? It could have been talked about it before, or this guy David could have been the one who went bing 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 and saw the revelation. But it goes off into a whole lot of different directions and rabbit trails all on its own, because you can take any one of these issues, trees, who hid them, volcanoes, mountains, the land, the biblical background and scriptural background of this information. I mean, on and on and on. History, lengths of times that these things happened. Now, you could get really bogged down in, I gotta know this and this and this. And aren't we, at the end of the day, supposed to be utilizing this information, this knowledge, and this awakening and this camaraderie to take down the controllers? Isn't that the purpose of all of this? Okay? Because it doesn't do us any good if we don't do something with it. So the idea then left to me in my interpretation of this is just more ammunition in my arsenal, but to use for what? I read a thing the other day. It's off the topic, but then it's very on the topic. Read a thing the other day. I was scanning through the comments in somebody's video, and I can't remember who. And when I tell the story, if it was your video or your comment, could you please leave it in the comments? Because big kudos to you. They came up with an idea. They said, here's a way to get a lot of attention real quick. everybody that has a globe or can buy a globe at some cheap place or at a recycling whatever resale place, get your globes, get all of your globes, and on one given day, everybody take the globes and put them on the steps of the courthouse in their town.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit like the
And
people
say,
when they
here, take your freaking globes and shove them.
it's like the Beatles when in America when they burnt all their records, if you remember that in the 60s.
Yes.
Do the same with the globes. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Even it can be a plastic globe. You can buy one of these.
Even that blow up one you have.
One of these for about
you don't have
$5.
any big investment in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite a demonstration, wouldn't it? If you had hundreds of these all blowing around the town hall steps or something, yeah.
So somebody out there who's a really good organizer, because we can't do everything and we shouldn't be expected to, and we already get a lot of heat for trying to control the narrative, whatever that means. And so somebody out there or somebody's make a group, make a date, make a time, and this is a simple one. This is a slam dunk, and put it out there and share it among the Flat Earth Facebook groups. Given enough time out ahead that everybody can prepare. I don't happen to have a globe in the house, so I would have to go and I would not buy one, so I would have to go and find one somewhere at a recycling or a Goodwill or someplace where somebody's going to benefit from it. But just pick a day and let's do that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's easy.
9/11 would be a good day. The day we give the globes back. Instead of the remember the 5th of November. You got guys like Dave Murphy. Hey, let's throw an olive branch out, a real olive branch to the Globe Rusters crew and Antonio, and Patricia. Here's a great thing to share amongst the community. Why doesn't everybody take a globe or build a globe or find a ball and paint the continents on it and do what Lori's suggesting? Drop it off at your local, judge, your local courthouse.
On the steps of the courthouse.
Maybe an even better idea is to get thousands of people, if possible, and to take a globe with you and release them all where it's been televised.
Yeah, well, you need live streamers because it's not going to be, you're not going to be televised. And even if, let's say, someone like Jaron, even if he had 1/4 of his subscriber base, 10,000 people show up with globes, that would be amazing.
Well, I mean, we're talking about this Flat Earth thing, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, John LeBon, that it's global, okay? It's happening all over the place, and everybody talks about the fact that there's there's actually only so many flat earthers, that number's not actually that big. Then why are there 7 million flat earth videos on YouTube alone? So I just posted in the group the other day. I've got people coming into my group on Facebook from Indonesia, from all over the place, Brazil, everywhere. And so this could easily be 9/11 was a global event. Okay, so it would have a complete understanding anywhere on the plane when everybody takes their globes and puts them on some government steps. I don't care what it is, the courthouse, the city center building, whatever it is.
Yeah, and a spin-off on that one, which might be interesting. I'm sure you can buy inflatable balloons and inflate them with helium. We could get inflatable balloons with a globe shape on it and tie a little tag on it telling people the Earth is flat and let thousands of those go. If it was done collectively between people and they all chipped in so money, they could buy, say, 1,000 balloons and release them over a city.
I'm not going to support that one, Lawrence, because that's littering. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't do that one.
Well, plastic biodegrades.
Oh, you can make a paper mache globe and paint it blue and put some green, land on it and a little North white North Pole and South Pole. And it won't cost you anything but paper mache and a little paint. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to do it for free or cheap.
Hmm. I agree. It needs to be open source and free.
Yeah.
You know, so no donations because it's a mockery of the truth now, in my opinion. Which
Mark Sargent, for sure. Take yours, and you got a couple globes you hold around in your hands all the time and play with.
yeah, Rob Skiba, all those other people I
Skiba's
see.
globes, all those guys, they all got globes. What are you holding on to them for? Here we go. Here's our chance. Make them count.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very valid point there, Laurie, because most, it's been virtually all chat about the flat Earth and stuff since its inception, and there's been no action. So things like this would be a step in the right direction to bring it to the wider public, or people would start saying, "What the fuck are all those globes doing? What are they doing with them?"
Everybody could just videotape it with their cell phone and upload. I'd put a compilation. I'd spend hours putting all those videos together gladly.
Right, and think about this. What are the news people? Jimmy can testify to this. Local news people in little towns all over wherever, okay, are all looking for local stories to have on their local news segment. And he did some website thing, and he sent out a press release that he was doing it. And as a matter of fact, he'd probably be happy to write the press release for this event that's going to happen. And so the press release went out, and this little local news person called him up and said, "Oh, I want to do a story on your release." And she followed him all over the place that day, and he said, "Oh, Laurie's got something to say about it." And she followed him where I was working, painting someplace, and came in and got me on the news. So if the press releases are sent out by individuals in different areas all over, then especially larger cities. Can you imagine a city like Chicago or Atlanta or LA? People going and taking piles of globes somewhere.
It'll go down as the day we gave the globe back. I think it's a great idea, guys.
It is a great idea. So whoever came up with that, like I said, I'm not taking credit for it. I read it in a comment somewhere, and kudos to you because it's a brilliant idea.
And local people would write on it because there was a boat, 60 kilometers that was vacant, and someone had spray painted flat Earth on it, and it made the news. And a bloody guy was fighting with his son's daughter, and he was a globe earther, and she was defending the flat Earth, and he started pitching propane tanks into the fire. It's a globe, blowing propane.
Yeah, and it was all over the news, right?
So could you imagine if, let's say, 5,000, I'm going to be honest because I do watch, I believe there is at least 5,000 active YouTube flat earthers. I'd like to see each one. Imagine, that would be great.
It would be great. And if everybody, I don't even care what size the town you live in. You could live in a town of 700. Everybody's got either some main place, whether if your town isn't big enough to have a town hall or a little courthouse on the square, then I know it's at least big enough to have a post office, okay? I mean, that would be even a greater place to do it at the post office. But whatever it is, I think that it says not only have we joined forces with each other, okay, and have enough of a, as Mark Sargent likes to put it, hive mind, which is crazy, but whatever, that, we can organize together and that we can do something positive. It's a very positive, upbeat thing, I think. Upbeat.
And I think whoever's close to Stephen Lord Christ, I'll paint a globe on the inside of one of these balloons, and we'll send it to his house just to be fair.
Yeah. Okay, so challenges out there for that, for all the other YouTube channels. I'll make an event in my group of roughly 3,000, 3,100 people, something like that, on Facebook. It is a closed group, and that kind of is hard for people to share out because of it being closed, but I'll figure out something. and we'll get it out there, and we'll just share it all around. And I think September 11th is a great day for that, an absolutely perfect day for that. Got a month to go. Okay, so there we go. We got giant trees and giants, and possibly there was civilizations here before that burned down or got blown down or whatever happened, blew up in a big nuke blast. And so I think everybody should download this video and post it on their own channel. I think it stands for itself, whether it's in Russian or not. If you have the capabilities of running the video and stripping out the voiceover and the music and just run the video and talk over it, or put some captions on top of it and play some nice music in the background, really low, really quiet, so people can read. And let's see if we can't get this information out there, because it seems to be resonating with quite a few people that have watched the video in its entirety. The video, the channel that I originally, or Lawrence found it and I originally shared it from, on this channel is listed in the comments, and as well as the original video itself and the channel. So get it out there. Share that guy's version of it, you know, if you want, or share the Flat Earth Conspiracy version of it. He's still going to get all the.
Yeah, I mean, let me just bring it up now. So let me just read a few comments out on here, Laurie. So if you've got any doubts about whether you should read it or not, then these are some of the comments. Congratulations on this video. Great information. More jaw-dropping, eye-opening, mind-blowing realizations. Sharing and love your accent. Be blessed. Next one. Thank you very much. That's the guy replying. Incredible, the deception of mankind. Somebody else. I'm heading to Devil's Tower in a few weeks. I can't wait to view it with a new perspective. I'll be sure to document everything I see. So these people are probably going to make videos about it. Devil's Tower is the big tree stump that's in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Somebody else. I've been to the West many times and have countless photographs of strange structures. It's going to be a much more amazing trip after watching this. Anyway, another guy. One of the best videos of 2016. Incredible, thought-provoking, to say the least. Thank you for sharing this. Excellent video. Mind-blowing. Thank you so much. I feel like a sponge soaking everything in. Now I have so many questions. So who cut the giant trees? Who was mining in Antarctica? Do you know more about Antarctica? I know there are worlds beyond the poles. I'm only 9 minutes in. Where did you find these photographs? Never seen anything like it. You know, everybody who watches it through, it's like a life transforming thing, because it's changing your perspective of your entire environment and where you live. You go walking in the mountains now, and you're not seeing mountains. You're seeing, you know, what remains of silicon trees from thousands of years ago. Pretty awesome.
Well, and how many comments have you read, Lawrence, where people have actually said, this made me cry?
Yeah,
or
I've seen that as well. Yeah.
Tears?
Yeah. People are sad because they wish they were here when this. Oh yeah, this is the first comment that came up. Even Earth's wounds are healed beautifully. So those are the first two. Dan Dimension was the next. Thank you, excellent presentation. Mine was the third. I just put awesome, and then sent a message saying awesome was an understatement. Next one, brilliant work, by the way, mind-blowing. Thank you so much. Next one, this may be the most brilliant, eye-opening piece of work I have ever seen. A lot to think about. You know, people are just being blown away by this, and you know, it's on the channel, so it's on the Flat Earth Conspiracy channel. It's not been converted yet, and we'll try and do something with it so it's more easily comprehended. But you know, everybody who's watched it, they're blown away by it. You know, and it just makes so much more sense. It resonated with me straight away. 10 minutes into it, that was it. I was freaking out.
Let me show
because I've been looking at things all my life, looking at these structures, thinking, you know, that isn't. Rocks don't do those sort of things. You know, there's something going on there.
Let me share this real quick, Lawrence. This is from the video. Hold on a second. It started playing. This is from the video. there are no forests on flat Earth. Wake up! And this is on the one that I shared. But he made this representation of this loaf of bread on the side of this semi truck. Okay, and this loaf of bread represents 20,000% less. Why does this thing keep doing that? I thought I keep shutting it off. There. 20,000% less content on Earth than was before whatever happened. Okay? And
Yeah, we've got
you
the
have to
scraps that have been left
watch it,
over.
and you have to look at this aspect of it, because this is like hard to even fathom what he's saying, but he's saying that that's how much less there is on what is the word I'm trying to use? The carbon, the content of everything. Okay, so that's, he's using this as a representation. So he did, he does go into quite a bit of different aspects of presenting.
Laurie, think about it this way: if we were still giants, 100 foot tall, there wouldn't be enough food to eat, because every man would be eating a whole supermarket full of food every week. So maybe God scaled us down so that we could actually exist on what's left of the earth.
Well, but he does go into that and say there is no shortage of resources. There are enough resources here for everyone to live fine. Because if you gathered up all of the humans, all 7 billion of them, and put them in one place, you could fit them all in Texas with roughly like 1,000 square feet per person, and all the rest of Earth would be left with no people on it. So, I mean, that's one of those mathematical equations somebody made up that said, let's extrapolate this. I think the equivalent was 1,500 square feet, or they would all fit in Australia with, in Queensland or something. It's like there's that much more land than there are people. So we're not running over each other.
Yeah.
We're just using scarcity to control people, and that is where the
whole economy is run that.
The whole the whole world and the whole economies run that way, based on scarcity.
Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, that comes makes a lot more sense now. You look at that, and you've got insects that are bigger than humans, haven't you? And
Right.
if we could travel back in time,
man-eating, fly-eating flycatcher things, and
yeah.
I mean, think about all the weird plants, and people say, well, they kind of all have been trees, couldn't have all have been silicone. Well, what if some of them were, basalt based? What if they're, you have different structures of plants here on Earth now. You have mushrooms, they're not trees. You have mosses, they're not trees, grasses. So there's lots of different fauna, flora, on Earth now that I would say there would have been at least that many varieties before in giant form.
Let me just check something.
Here's this fragment from the Book of Giants, when the one giant realizes that they aren't strong enough to overcome the forces of heaven and that they're going to be destroyed. Pretty interesting.
So they knew.
They knew, yeah, they were fighting a losing battle.
So I would have to say that, anytime somebody gets word that the wrath of God is coming down on you, there's going to be some that are going to run away and try to escape.
Here we are. By weight, on Earth, 28.2% of Earth is silicon. It's the most abundant substance on Earth apart from oxygen.
There you go.
28, nearly a third of Earth.
Why are people having a problem with that there was a silicon-based something prior to this? Why is it freaking people out?
Well, there's plenty of silicon about then, isn't there?
Everything's carbon. There couldn't have been we couldn't have existed. We couldn't have existed in a silicon. Well, nobody said we were there. This could have all apparently all happened before we got here. That's the whole point of it. This is prior to humans.
At this point, that doesn't matter
Why doesn't it matter?
because we're too far into the game to to erase anything that's happened up here to now. Now it's about just people snapping out of their mindset.
All right, so let's wrap it up. This is our first weekday show, a Wednesday show, and we're going to move to this day in future shows. Lawrence and I have gotten a little tired of giving up our Saturday and or Sunday night for 3 hours, and we're going to try to cut them down to 2. We did 2.5 tonight when we were only going to do 2. So, but it was a new topic and a new subject and lots of things to be said. So, in closing, Ronnie, thank you for joining us again, and we invite you to come back again next week on Wednesday if you would like to join us.
Yeah,
And
Ronnie,
thank you
thanks,
for your
mate.
contribution.
Brilliant stuff on the that big room, the vault. That was very interesting.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. I guess lastly, I could say the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which then became the least of all seeds, but still grew greater than all the herbs and became a tree so that the birds could fly and nest in. So we should all remember that, we can become powerful trees of truth, and whether you believe in someone else's truth or not, you can still become your very own tree and be strong and proud.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Ronnie.
wise words, mate.
Jimmy, you have anything in closing that you'd like to get people to think about?
Well, I think the video is worth watching a few times. I mean, there's so much information in it and so many little things. I've only seen it one time. I'd like to go back and watch it again. And I'm glad it's out there now. And I'm glad that people are starting to work with it to try and break it down into simple, easy to understand chunks. Because if you try and take the whole thing in one head, it's too much.
Well, it's a lot.
It's a lot of information.
I mean,
It is a big subject. I mean, in our Facebook group, Laurie, that is the main subject being talked. 80% of the input now is, people looking at it and having their minds blown, and it's not reached the other Facebook groups yet or hit any other YouTubes, as I understand. But it's set to explode. That video may well get 6-figure views before too long.
I hope it does, because the more people that watch it and are talking about it and breaking it down and adding their life experiences, their research, their backgrounds of knowledge, it certainly will help to make it even more understandable. So, okay, with that, thanks for joining us, everyone who's been watching, and we hope you'll come and join us next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight.
Eastern Standard Time.
It's Eastern Standard Time. No, it's daylight still,
Oh,
but it's UTC -4, so that's our zone and time scale. So it'll be 6 p.m. on that. So we'll see you later, and please watch the video, and if you can share it anywhere on your own Facebook. Be ready for a little bit of backlash, but so far it hasn't been as bad as talking about flat Earth. So it may be another avenue to get people to an introduction to some of the flat Earth concepts. So good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Good night, Lawrence. Good night, Jimmy. Good night, Ronnie. Bye.
Good night.